This is an NBC News special report. Here's Lester Holt.
Good day, everyone. We're coming on the air with breaking news. U.S. officials confirm that the U.S. has begun retaliatory strikes in the Middle East in response to the deadly attack that killed 3 American troops. The strikes come days after those service members were killed in a drone attack on a U.S. outpost in Jordan last weekend, marking the first American deaths since the Israel-Hamas war began. Dozens of other troops were also injured in the attack as well. Today's news also comes hours after President Biden performed one of the most solemn duties of the presidency today, attending the dignified transfer of the fallen troops at Dover Air Force Base, honoring them before they are laid to rest. Our chief international correspondent, Keir Simmons, is on the ground right now in Iraq. What do we know at this hour, Keir?
Well, Lester, U.S. officials telling NBC News that retaliatory strikes have begun against Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria. This is from U.S. government sources. It's not an official announcement by the U.S. government, as I understand it, as I speak to you right now, Lester. We did have, though, news, I guess about 30 minutes ago, that there was something happening in eastern Syria, along the border, near the border with Iraq, a place called Mayadin, which is part of a strip that we know includes encampments for Iranian-backed militias, and also in that same area, a well-known Iranian base, frankly, run by the Iranians. So whether that is connected to what we are hearing now from these U.S. government sources, hard to tell. We will have to wait for more news, because it is both Syria and Iraq that we're being told that these strikes have begun. But of course, Lester, this is what we have been expecting for days now, and we've got some kind of a picture of where the strikes may be. There are, frankly, multiple places that the Biden administration could choose to target tonight across Syria and Iraq, and then also very, very difficult judgments, Lester, for the Biden administration about how to do this in a way that sends a clear message to Tehran without overshooting, if you like, and causing a reaction from Tehran that escalates things towards a wider war. That is what the Biden administration has said again and again. It is very, very eager to try to avoid, but at the same time, it clearly wants to send a message to Iran tonight about the killing of these 3 American military.
The Biden administration has approved plans to retaliate against multiple targets, including Iranian personnel and facilities in Iraq and Syria, after 3 U.S. service members were killed last weekend by a drone strike in Jordan. That's according to a CBS News report on Thursday, which cited American officials who said the United States will conduct the strikes over a number of days.
This is a dangerous moment in the Middle East.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin addressed the plans in general terms at a Thursday briefing.
We will continue to work to avoid a wider conflict in the region, but we will take all necessary actions to defend the United States, our interests, and our people. And we will respond when we choose, where we choose, and how we choose.
The American soldiers killed in Jordan represent the first U.S. deaths in an escalation of violence across Middle East flashpoints since Israel's war in Gaza began in October. President Joe Biden, under pressure to take firm action without igniting a wider war with Iran, said on Tuesday outside the White House that he had decided how to respond without giving details. Tehran has said it will respond to attacks on its territory or its citizens and interests abroad. The CBS report quoted U.S. officials as saying weather would be a factor in the timing of the strikes, as Washington preferred good visibility to guard against the risk of hitting civilians. Washington has said the recent attack on its troops in Jordan near the Syrian border bore the footprints of Kataib Hezbollah, a pro-Iranian militia based in neighboring Iraq. That group said on Wednesday it was suspending military action against U.S. forces to avoid embarrassing Baghdad.
A document that was found in Jacumba, California. It's written in Chinese. If you go on the back, though, this is what really gets me. It actually has the organization that created this document directly from El Otro Lado and the American Bar Association. These guys are directly aiding and abetting.
Tensions are high as a wide-open border floods Texas cities with military-aged males, criminals, and potential terrorists that has citizens on edge.
Courtney Hacking keeps a shrine in her Nevada home to her husband Peter, her 4-year-old daughter Ellie, and her 2-year-old son Grayson. Their car was struck head-on, killing all three.
He was here illegally, he drove illegally, he was working illegally, and he killed 3 innocent people.
Francisco Oropesa, 38-year-old Mexican national who has allegedly killed 5 of his former Texas neighbors. He apparently was out shooting a weapon, being very loud and belligerent, apparently drinking. The neighbors went outside and asked him to stop shooting that weapon. He then in turn took his AR-15 and allegedly slaughtered a family of 5, including a 9-year-old boy.
My newly 20-year-old daughter, Kayla Hamilton, was murdered in her own room and left on the floor like trash. Kayla's murderer was apprehended by Border Patrol crossing illegally into the U.S. at the southwest border in Rio Grande City, Texas. He was a 16-year-old known gang member affiliated with MS-13 in El Salvador.
As the Biden administration demands the United Nations NGO Soros-engineered invasion continue at all costs.
$500 million in investment, he says, to invest in startups, established companies, social impact initiatives, and businesses started by migrants and refugees. What about all the people in this country that could really use that help themselves to get a leg up?
Yes.
You know, charity begins at home.
Have you done everything you can do with executive authority, or is there more you could do absent legislation?
Not all I can do.
He immediately halted construction of the border wall. He reinstated the disastrous policy of catch and release, and he ended the incredibly successful Remain in Mexico agreement. And that took the lowest rate of illegal immigration, and it caused it to explode. We now have the highest rate in history. 9.6 million illegal immigrants have come into this country, and Joe Biden wants it. It's deliberate. He could fix it tomorrow.
Okay, we had a problem here.
Responding to a tweet spotlighting the heavily armed states backing Texas in its standoff with the Biden administration, rather than at the very least calm the fears of his constituents, Texas Democrat State Representative Gene Wu suggested the proper response to those backing Texas would be for the U.S. military to drop bombs on these Americans with drone-fired Hellfire missiles. The audacity of the statement of naked psychopathic democide was met with, as expected, enraged tweets. However, Wu continued to double down on his stance that the American people that he represents are the enemy.
Never, ever in my 3+ decades ever heard anyone accuse parents of murdered children of being partisan one way or the other.
State Representative Gene Wu has been accusing Crime Stoppers of being partisan for calling out judges who grant multiple felony bonds to repeat violent offenders. In a tweet, Khan invited Wu to a POMC meeting.
Mr. Wu declined, said, I don't go to Republican organization events. And when I woke up on Saturday and I saw that hurt me because this is not a partisan group.
For the life of me, I cannot figure out why a state representative would come to the ill-advised conclusion that POMC meetings at Crime Stoppers are partisan. That's about as far-fetched as you can get.
The madness to destroy the United States from within is completely off the rails in 2024. As disturbing video from Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport shows a group of migrants tucked away in a hidden room guarded by a U.S. service member.
Yeah, so these are just recently documented travelers getting released from ICE, getting to where they need to be.
Apparently, the U.S. military is aiding and abetting the collapse of the United States.
I love my right-wing friends who talk about the tree of liberty is water with the blood of patriots. If you need to work about taking on the federal government, you need some F-15s.
America is in free fall, and no one is manning the controls. The point of no return may already be long behind us. John Bound reporting.
We do not warn of false flags to try to predict horrible events. We warn of false flags to try and prevent them. They are the norm for starting massive conflicts. They are based on lies, and so we only hope that the truth will make them futile. Last week, I reported on rumors that Victoria Nuland was planning a false flag attack on a Ukrainian nuclear power plant. There is now talk in Kiev that the real president of Ukraine, Victoria Nuland, has become so desperate for NATO troops to enter Ukraine and continue this U.S. proxy war against Russia that she is willing to murder innocent locals with a radioactive cloud and blame it on Russian forces. After that report, documentary filmmaker Chris Emery, who has spent years researching PATCON, the U.S. intelligence operation to use false flags as a way of criminalizing American patriots, reached out to me with some information that shows how this is standard operating procedure for the black hats in our government.
We had done our first movie premiere in March of that year in Salt Lake City with an attorney that we actually interviewed on the film by the name of Jesse Trinidad. He was approached by a command team leader that was in charge of 10, including himself, basically commandos, to blow up the Browns Ferry nuclear power plant in Athens, Alabama, under the Operation PATCON. And then Jesse went into detail about what PATCON was, which would later morph into the Waco attack, and then the Oklahoma City bombing, and then our current present-day ramification of that was J6. That nuclear power plant is still standing today because this command leader says no, that violated their rules of engagement that they were taught in their special operations ever since he was, a rookie commando. And he says, we are not killing 27 innocent U.S. civilians, no matter how much money you're paying us. Each of his partners, there were 10 commandos altogether, were given duffel bags full of cash. Each were given $5 million. They left it in the parking lot in the wee hours. He said between 2:30 and 3 o'clock in the morning, they literally left these duffel bags in the parking lot, in the far end of the parking lot, away from the nuclear power plant, and drove away. And they basically told their commanding officer at the Pentagon to F off. We're dealing with people that are of the occult, or in a dark corner of the universe that we can't even imagine. And Nuland is in that pack with Merrick Garland and several others, without a doubt. She needs to be brought up on treason and indicted, put on trial, and thrown in prison, and the key tossed away.
We also spoke on the subject of what looks to be the beginning of a false flag being set up on the southern border, with World Economic Forum puppet Greg Abbott now calling for a civil war.
What in the world? Why did it take him almost 2.5 years to gear up? I think it's disingenuous what he's doing. There's poor ranchers and the private citizens within 50, 60 miles of the border have gotten their land, their homes robbed, their ranches decimated, trash, human waste, windows broken into, property damage. He could have put the thumb screw on that a long time ago. Why he chose to do so now is beyond me. They're much more keen. They have the operative radar, on high alert now, and they'll be able to hopefully weed out a lot of these operatives that, whether they know it or not, are being paid by the feds to be the fly in the ointment and get a lot more people in trouble. It's just going to be a reincarnation of J6 all over again.
Expert on false flags and the southern border crisis, Michael Yawn, is also warning people not to fall for the trap.
And we already know that the so-called, I call it OGUS, the occupational government of the United States, we already know that it's out of control. We already know that the only rules that it plays by is anything it can get away with, it will do, right? We already know that. We saw January 6th. We see Americans have to show their ID and get searched and whatnot to get on airplanes. Meanwhile, they got illegals, straight up invaders coming across the border by the thousands every day that can board aircraft without any ID. There are no rules. We are clearly being hunted. And the American citizens, patriots, are clearly being hunted. They're looking for any excuse to go to war, and they will do it. Obviously, there's going to be a very serious war. It's clearly coming. Don't walk into their traps. Do not do it. Why would you go to Eagle Pass, which is so baited, when Abbott clearly could close the border if he wanted to?